بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أما بعد أحبتي في الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته أسأل الله كريم رب العرش العظيم أن يتولنا في الدنيا والآخرة. أحبتي في الله, a question was asked about choosing a spouse as a second wife from overseas with being in the West, and I believe the context was probably America. However, I think this applies to many other Western countries. One of the things I want to mention, and in this specific, we'll talk about things without being too detailed about what was discussed with regards to this issue. One of the things that we have to consider is the importance of a husband and wife being together, regardless whether it's a second, third, or fourth wife. Yes, there can be needs and there are exceptions. Some women just need a certain amount of time, or they really want to get married, so they're willing to be in a long distance relationship. But in the experience that we have, that this fails a lot of times. Sometimes it's successful, but I know countless marriages that have failed because of the distance, especially when it comes to a second wife, because then there's children involved and then there's other issues involved. The second point I want to mention to reflect upon, and we're not totally discouraging this, but I want a person to go into these types of situations thinking, is that if you cannot bring your family, your second wife or third wife or fourth wife, then that means either you have the financial ability where you're going to be able to travel frequently, and especially when that comes to being overseas, that's difficult. And a lot of people in a situation that I know are not financially wealthy where they're able to do that. And that puts strain, and a lot of times there's a divorce as a result of that. Or a type of oppression where you can't see your wife for 4 or 5 years or something like that because of your job. So you've got to consider that yeah, you might make that one trip and you solidify the marriage, but then you've got a distance of a wife that you're not taking care of, that you're unable to be with, her physical, mental, spiritual needs, and your physical, spiritual needs as well, that you may need that from the 2 wives or the 3 wives, but yet your wife is in Colombia, your wife is in Brazil, your wife is in Jamaica, your wife is in Somalia, your wife is in Kenya, your wife is, you've got to consider these things. And as I've said, we've seen many times where it's unsuccessful. So this is something to reflect on. And whether or not you have an agreement of whether she's going to stay in her country or not, even with that, it's still being distant. I rarely see that there's khair in it. I rarely see with khair being it. So that's why I'm offering this as advice to reflect on these things. A last point, because this was mentioned in this particular scenario, is that the woman wants and requests a lot of things. She wants the car, the house, and all these things. So she basically wants financial stability, which is khair. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think when you enter into a marriage in that situation, if you are not financially well off, I don't say stable, I say well off, then that's a problem. When are you going to have the mahar and be able to afford a house? When are you going to be able to afford that chest of gold that she wants? When are you going to be able to afford the house that she's requiring of you? If that is the scenario, I say also you need to think, you need to reflect about it being realistic. Is that realistic that you will be able to meet her needs if she's just looking for a financial husband? And I don't say there's anything wrong with that. Everyone's needs, everyone's requirements are different. But I just say in general, for the Muslim household, that stability, it comes from being together and knowing one another and having time to spend and grow together. But when you have distance, and I know this personally, it destroys, it hurts, it tears the heart apart to where people grow in different directions. They grow in different paths. But when you're at least together in the same city or the same country, at least, you have more opportunity to keep those bonds and those contacts and see one another much more frequently. So those are things to consider, especially when marrying from a faraway land and so forth. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the Almighty to accept our good and forgive our evil, protect us all from kulli su'in makruh, bless us all with that which will be a comfort to our hearts and our souls, and physically, mentally, and spiritually, especially in the marriages. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad.